Welcome back to Silicon Heartland Sessions. Today I have the privilege of sitting down with Disha Patel, the Digital Technology and Innovation Lead at Amgen Ohio. Amgen is at the forefront of biotechnology and innovation, leveraging digital transformation to drive groundbreaking advancements in healthcare. And their mission is simple: to serve their patients. Disha is a key leader in shaping this transformation, bringing her expertise in technology, leadership, and strategy to an ever-evolving industry. But today we're not just talking about technology. We're talking about purpose, resilience, mentorship, and taking the leap into new opportunities. Disha has built an incredible career, and we're going to explore the principles and habits that have guided her along the way. We'll also weave in some inspiration from books that have influenced her, like Misty Copeland's The Wind at My Back, Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and Minda Zetlin's Career Self-Care. And of course, we'll talk about her theme song, I Hope You Dance, by Leanne Womack. Disha, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sean. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. And, I just want to say very thankful to the Ohio community for having open arms and welcoming Amgen into the ecosystem and integrating us into the Silicon Heartland conversation. So thank you.
You're welcome. Heck yeah. We are so excited to have you. And obviously we're very, very excited to have Amgen and everything that you're bringing to the community. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
I tell you what, before we jump in, let's start with something personal, your theme song. So I'll have to admit, I'd never heard this song before you told me about it. I've listened to it a few times. It's a beautiful song. It's a song called I Hope You Dance by Leanne Womack. And it's a song about, taking chances and embracing life's possibilities and never letting fear stop you from moving forward. Those themes really resonate with me.
Yeah.
Why did you choose this song, and how does it reflect your outlook on life?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I think about, I appreciate all genres of music, right? But I do have a soft spot for country and pop. And so this song is
Awesome.
very wholesome and just a very positive outlook on life, right? Like you said, it's one of purpose. It's about letting go. It's about taking chances. Like when I think about my life and what I want it to entail is I do want to live a life of purpose, right? And I also want to make sure that I don't regret living the life that has been given to me and try to make the most of it. Right. And so when I think about my career and how I think about this song in my career is, I never thought I would be the lead of Amgen Ohio from a technology standpoint. Right.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And I think about some of the chances I took. Nothing was prescripted to me or planned, it just kind of happened and I took those chances, right? So as I built my career, I wanted to explore different things. So like for example, earlier in my career, I traveled a lot. Like I worked in Portugal, I worked in Singapore.
Wow.
That helped me, learn new ways of life and the global mindset. I think about the chances I took then to move from the Midwest to California when I initially started at Amgen, and not really having a lot of friends in the LA area, right? And now I look back and coming back to the Midwest where I'm originally from, it's just beautiful, and it's just a great story that inspires me about taking those chances. And I feel so grateful that I've had those abilities to see and take those chances when they came.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you started your description with using the word purpose. You use the word purpose multiple times, and it sounds to me like a big part of your journey has been driven by a deep sense of purpose. When you have that kind of purpose, when you have that kind of North Star, it can really guide you through some very, it sounds to me like you've had some journeys in your career that have been probably pretty scary, pretty impactful. So, starting with that purpose, I think is critically important, because to your point, when you have that right purpose, that can be one of the elements that go into what you were saying about being able to take risks and being able to really be your true authentic self. And it kind of reminds me of another book that you'd mentioned, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. you know? And so when we were talking earlier and we talked about your sense of purpose and starting with why, for our listeners, not everybody's familiar with Simon Sinek. I would imagine there's a lot of folks that are. But in his book, he talks about how great leaders and organizations succeed because they're driven by this deep sense of purpose. So looking back on your journey, what is your why? And what has been like the driving force behind your career and leadership in the role you're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not going to say I fully know my purpose completely in life yet, but I would say that as I've unfolded my life and my experiences in life, right, I've
Hmm.
come to really put it around a few concepts, right, of what are the skill sets and talents that I've been gifted with, right? And not only that, but where am I needed in this world, right? And I think that, and then where do I have passion, right? And I think when those elements come together, they help form a sense of like, okay, this is where I am meant to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And so I'll take, for example, I I never realized I was so good in math and science, right? And I remember going through elementary, high school, college, and it just was something that was easy for me to understand, right? And I understand
Hmm.
that all of us have different gifts and talents, right? But recognizing that, having wonderful mentors and supporters along the way that nurtured those skill sets and helped open up ideas and doors for me to think about what could be possible, right? And then I also knew that I always wanted to make an impact helping others, right? And so nothing like the healthcare industry, the biotech, the pharma industry, where you're saving people's lives, right?
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And also to couple that with technology, it was just a beautiful area for me that I felt like I could make an impact in, and where I would have the interest and the passion around. So I think that's how that propelled me forward into why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And I couldn't even have imagined that Amgen, which a company that I deeply care for and is doing amazing things for saving people's lives, would open up somewhere in Ohio, where I'm originally from, and I can make an impact leveraging technology and also saving people's lives. So it's pretty impactful and purposeful for me.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think it's a lot of wisdom in what you're saying, and a lot of folks in the community, myself included, can use your advice from the perspective that when you're looking for your purpose. You said the first thing you did was you started with your gifts, and this is this to me that's like the seedlings of authenticity, starting with your gifts and then evaluating how your gifts intersect with where you can put those gifts to best use.
Yeah.
That's very inspirational.
Thank you. Yes, that's how I see life. And um,
Well, I think a lot of folks probably don't focus enough on what their natural gifts are. I mean, a lot of folks come into, I'll speak for myself, when I came into technology years ago, I, I didn't take that approach. I took the approach that I felt like technology, and this is back in the 80s, I didn't know, this is before the internet and everything else. I didn't know what kind of a role. I could never have anticipated that the world that we live in now and just how impactful technology has been. It impacts everything we do. And I knew back then that technology and computers in particular were going to be an important part of the future. Didn't know what, and it was interesting to me. But I do wonder, would it have changed my trajectory if I had done what you did and started with what are my gifts? Not just from because, like you said, to your point, math and science kind of came easy to you. It kind of came easy to me as well. I took a bit of a non-traditional path and went into the military, served in the U.S. Navy. I was a data systems tech, and I ran the data center on board the ship I served on.
wow, that's
And but I wonder if my trajectory would have been different had I really, taken an assessment of what my gifts are and really thought about how can I take my unique gifts and and, and find the intersection between what, my gifts and the kind of good that I can do in the world. And by the way, you can tell me if you agree or disagree. I don't think there's ever a time that's too late to do that analysis.
No, I totally agree with that concept. I believe you're never too late to find your purpose in life, right?
Yeah.
And I for me, it takes a little bit of like reflection and self awareness, right? And for
Hmm.
me, that's very important to me. Reflection, like when I go through experience in life, whether they're given to me or I actively seek them out, right? I think about how I always reflect back of like, what can I learn from this? How has this made me better, or what has it taught me about me? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Like, I think those types of things really help you hone in on your gifts. And I'm not saying that we're all know our gifts. We might, as you said, find out at the age of 80 our purpose in life. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that's
Right.
the beauty of the journey of life, right? Like as you're going through it, taking the time to process and reflect back, and try to incorporate that into your as you move forward in life.
Right. I agree with you. And, like when you reflect back on your life and your journey, and thinking about some of the missteps you've taken, or perhaps some of the setbacks you've had, or some of the challenges you faced, or maybe even the failures that you've had, the word that comes to mind is resilience. And you had mentioned the book The Wind at My Back, and it's this book by Misty Copeland. For those who are listening who are not familiar with this book, it's really a deeply personal memoir. Misty was the first Black principal ballerina at the American Ballet Theater, and her book is all about resilience and, how she overcame obstacles, how she leaned on mentors like her mentor Raven Wilkinson, and, how she pushed through challenges in an industry that wasn't always welcoming to her. Can you maybe share a moment in your career where you faced significant challenges, and how did you push through, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to look at life in an optimistic way, always half full, but I would say that I think that's part of what keeps me resilient. But
Hmm.
besides that positivity and that optimism, I would have to say that um, being, and I know we've made strides in women in tech, right? But like, I think about my journey from being one of the very few women in my classrooms in college,
Hmm.
studying computer science and systems analysis and taking those math courses, right? Um, and sometimes feeling like I didn't belong there, or I felt like,
Hmm.
what am I doing here with all these guys in the room, and what do I have to offer, right? But like, I
Right.
don't want to say that. I think what helped encourage me was the beauty of the work, people that supported me, whether it was my family or mentors or teachers. They saw the potential in me, and to sometimes have that outside force of support is such a beautiful thing to help you get through that and cultivate that resiliency, right? And so I'm very fortunate, blessed to have had people come into my life at different points that encouraged me and said, "Hey, you can keep on doing this," even whenever I felt like, no, I couldn't. But I felt like that positivity that was reinforced really helped me in the resiliency piece.
I love it. I love it. Optimism goes a long way. Authenticity goes a long way as well.
Yeah.
And that can help others for you to find connectivity with others. But
Yeah.
it sounds to me like you are also maybe, struggling a little bit with what we would call imposter syndrome. So sound accurate? Am I reading you right?
Yes, yes. I think I
Yeah.
don't know.
Which
I
I think
can't
is pretty
speak.
common, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you also resonate with the imposter syndrome. I hope I'm not the only one. And
Definitely
imposter
not.
syndrome is a very, I think part of it is also your own headspace around it, right? Like you can
Hmm.
set up mental blocks yourself that say, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't be here. Like those kinds of negative talk, right? Like that stop you, or like, I'm going to get found out. Like, I really don't have the achievements or credentials that I thought I did, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I think that that's where for me, when I think about tactics I use to get over this imposter syndrome, I think about like, um, I think that goes back to having those mentors and advocates that you can lean on that really reiterate or mirror back to you that, hey, you're here because we believe in you. We know that you can add a positive outcome or impact to where your gifts are needed, right? So I really do believe that. And then once in a while, I'll joke about it, but it's true. Like if I have to go into a meeting where I do have to present and I'm not confident or I feel like the imposter syndrome is going to come out, I do a power pose right
Oh,
before.
really?
Yeah. And that power
You mean?
pose helps kind of like center me and put me back on track of like, I'm here. I have something to offer, and I want to make the organization better with my thoughts or my ideas. So that's how I think about
That's amazing. I can only imagine you doing a power pose before you're going into like you're going to the bathroom or whatever in front of the mirror and flex and
and like going,
yeah,
"Arr."
yeah. I think there's something to be said for those kinds of techniques to be
Yeah,
able to build yourself up.
yeah,
I'm with you. Especially in technology, I think it's very very common for folks to struggle with imposter syndrome, especially as you grow in your career and you take on more responsibility and now you're responsible for other folks.
hmm,
And there's going to be a time in your career where you're responsible for other people on your team, and those folks are undoubtedly going to be smarter than you on a particular topic or on a
yeah,
particular technology.
hmm,
And I think part of it is to your point, reminding yourself that, hey, I've got value to provide.
hmm,
I think the other thing that we would do well in being able to do is practicing being able to say I don't know and being
yeah.
okay with the fact that I don't know,
I
because who
agree.
knows everything.
No, you're right. You're right. I totally agree. Humility is one of the qualities I love about people. When I see it,
Yeah.
I always reiterate to people, I really appreciate how humble you are, because I think understanding that you don't know everything, right? And having that humility and insight to say, hey, I don't know this area. Can you educate me? Can you help me?
Hmm.
And I think that that's a very important quality for a leader to have too, right? So
Agree.
I think that helps encourage a more positive collaborative environment, and where you're really bringing out the superpowers of the team as well.
Right. Yeah, that's really, really well said. And when you're in tune with their superpowers, being able to find opportunities to bring out the superpowers. And to your point, I think you said something really, really interesting there. You can demonstrate authenticity by saying, I don't know. It can be a
Mhm.
very, very powerful way to let your authentic self come through, and it can actually very much work in your favor in terms of, you know, allowing folks to see that you're confident and you're okay with the fact that, hey, in this particular case, in this particular subject, whatever, I don't have all the answers, but
Right.
we've got people on the team and we have the resources, and we can get those answers.
Yeah. Mhm.
So heck yeah. So thinking of your leadership and kind of the influence that you have at Amgen Ohio and what you're building at Amgen Ohio, I have to imagine you think a lot about the legacy that you're
Mhm.
creating, and it kind of goes back to thinking about Misty Copeland again.
Mhm.
Her book talks about it. It also talks about like how her success. It wasn't just about what she accomplished, but how she paved the way for others as well. When you think about your career, what kind of legacy do you want to leave?
Yeah. That's such a powerful question. Just like, what is purpose in life, right? Like, what's
Yeah,
legacy in life, right? And for
yeah.
me, when I think about legacy, I think about what do you want to be remembered by? What is that lasting, long impression that you want to have? And it's not just about you, but like, let me take it in the context of Amgen, Ohio. What
Hmm.
a wonderful opportunity to build a greenfield facility from the ground up here and make a presence here in Ohio, right? Those are very few career moments and I'm very thankful for the opportunity. But I know
Heck
with
yeah.
that comes a responsibility of like thinking about legacy, right? Like Amgen Ohio is going to be here 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now, right? And I have to think about as I build, and it's not just me, we have an amazing collective team here at Amgen Ohio, but as we continue to hire, like when we think about culture and what is the culture we want to build here at
Yeah.
Amgen Ohio, we
Hmm.
think, like, for example, the team that I'm building from the ground up, these are the future generation leaders, like, that I'm mentoring and that I'm putting stock in to say, like, hey, they're going to take the future too, right?
Hmm.
I think about um, the organizational muscle that we're slowly growing as we go from startup phase to scale to full, when we're 20 years out. I think about all that, and it's an amazing feeling to be able to think that I have a thumbprint in Amgen,
Hmm.
Ohio, and the future legacy of it, right? But I take it very seriously, right?
I believe it.
And I think that yeah, it's also about tradition, culture. Those are the words that conjure up when I think about legacy.
Hmm. I think the thing that, as you're describing the role that you play at Amgen and sort of the weight on your shoulders, the word that comes to mind is leadership,
Mm.
and how you're building this legacy
Mhm.
based on your leadership and your influence at Amgen and the community. So
Mm.
I'm curious, as a leader, what are the core principles that define your leadership style?
Yeah. Those that meet me, and as I've come to even recognize myself through just growing as a leader, is that I'm a very collaborative leader that tries to ensure that I create a positive, safe environment, one that
Hmm.
people feel like they can grow and learn. They can also trust in the ecosystem that has been created, as well as an an environment where people feel safe to voice diverse opinions, right? Whether based off of their experiences or where they came from, like being able to cultivate and bring the best ideas forward. Because I think that's where innovation comes through, is when you're able to cultivate those diverse perspectives on the table,
Hmm.
right? And so I would say those are the key leadership principles that I try to live by. One that's empathetic as well, recognizing that not everyone is wired or the same as you. And as a leader, you
Hmm.
need to recognize that everyone is wired differently. And how do you bring out the best in them, but also ensure a shared reality of your mission that you're trying to
Right.
accomplish, right?
Yeah.
And I also think that for me as a leader, it's about giving back. It's very important to me. It's part of my DNA. So, like, giving back in the context of how do I give back to the community? How can Amgen Ohio or my team help the community? Or
Right.
how can I help the next generation of leaders that are coming through,
Yeah.
inspiring them where I'm able to or am called to do? So I think that's how I would describe my leadership style.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like, you're really focused on creating an environment where people feel empowered to innovate, to
Mhm.
take risks,
Yeah.
and ultimately to grow. And so in your role, how do you encourage people to take steps outside of their comfort zone, outside of their comfort zones, and sort of take leaps in their careers,
Yeah.
like you have?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say, sometimes it's not easy. The imposter syndrome comes in,
Yeah. Okay.
the I need to be 100% perfect before I take on a role, right? Like those kinds of
Yeah.
feelings do come through sometimes. And so I try to remember, if I tell myself that, then I need to be able to be encouraging to my staff to know that they don't have to be 100%, for example, and in in a potential role that they might go forward with, right? Or if they don't know the answer, that we were just talking about, like sometimes being humble and not saying that you don't know the answer, or you need help, creating that environment for people to do that, right? And
Hmm.
that's how I encourage my staff. And of course, I think about my own career of, like, the support network I had, the fabric of people that, like, I knew that if I fell, I would have this like fabric or cloth of people ready to bounce me back up,
Yeah,
right?
like a
And
safety net.
yeah, like a
Yeah.
safety net. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
And so I think that's how I think about I want to be that for my staff, my and to encourage them. I think that's how I
Hmm.
would say that.
And it sounds to me like mentorship is probably very important to you.
Mhm.
And kind of going back to what we were talking earlier about Misty Copeland,
Mhm.
and she had a mentor in Raven Wilkinson,
Mhm.
and her mentor gave her strength and courage and encouragement. And I'm curious, who has been your Raven Wilkinson?
Yeah.
Is there a mentor that you've had that has really believed in you even before you fully believed in yourself?
Yeah, that's great question. I would say I'm fortunate to have a couple of ravens in my life, right? And I think about
Nice.
um obviously like some people see their parents as mentors, some may not, but I felt I grew up with supportive parents, right? And my
Mm.
dad himself was a software engineer, electrical engineer. So he kind of inspired some of why I am where I am today, right? I think about um, when I was in college, the dean of School of Engineering and Applied Science, he saw potential in me before I saw it and could
That's
see
awesome.
that I could cultivate into a leader in technology even at that early on in my life. And I'm very thankful for that. And then another defining moment was earlier in my career where that dean of School of Engineering Applied Science then introduced me to a technology executive, a female technology
Ah.
executive.
Hmm.
She played a very, very important role in not only encouragement and eventually not only became a mentor but kind of a sponsor, right?
Hmm.
But it was more of I could relate being a female in tech, right? I saw representation, so I was able to feel a little bit more comfortable, knowing that I could create a space in this in the tech world. And so I think those are moments where I feel like those mentors really helped shape me into who I am today.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Do you recommend everybody have a mentor
Oh my,
or
yes.
multiple mentors in your case?
Well, I do believe mentors can really help shape not only a career but how you look at things. So
Yeah.
I would have to say that I've had mentors that don't think like me, don't, they're the opposite of me, but I've appreciated that and I actually sought those types of mentors out
Yeah.
because like you think of it as like your board of directors, you need to have different perspectives at the table, right? And so
Well said.
for me, it was very important to find mentors that were okay being very direct and saying no. And because those taught me other skill sets that I now, yeah, I don't leverage them all the time, but like when to use them, right? So
Hmm.
I really think that everyone should seek out a mentor. And I know sometimes it can be a
Yeah.
daunting experience to ask
Hmm.
someone to be a mentor. But the way that I think about it is that, most likely people want to help. Like that's usually unless they don't have the time to, right? But most
Hmm.
likely people want to help. And so my
Yeah.
only thing is why don't you ask and just, start the conversation about like what do you admire about this person that you want to learn more from, right?
Hmm.
And then I usually think that organically grows and can turn into a very powerful relationship over time. And sometimes it turns into a reverse mentee session too.
Yeah.
I found myself at times in my career mentoring. Traditionally people think that mentorship is older, younger kind of concept, but the newer generations are mentoring, the baby boomers, gens. I don't even
Sure.
know what generation now we're on. I think now it's the alpha and beta that I'm getting reverse mentored on. But
There you go.
I think that that type of mentorship is also very important, right? And especially in
Yeah.
technology when technology is rapidly changing and how you apply it. And I think about my nieces and nephew. They're very digitally savvy since the day they were
Right.
born.
For sure.
And I was in that generation where technology was just taking uptake when I was like in college or, my first, just outside of college, right? So
Hmm.
you, I don't know. So I think mentorship is just beautiful all around. And whether it be a reverse mentorship or a, you know, a mentorship, I think that's great.
When you approach mentoring others, how, what do you think makes like the way in which you mentor others impactful?
I would say that when I when I think about the mentors that I've had and what they've brought to the table for me, and then when I think about how I give that back, I think about it in the context of it's not always about hearing, yeah, it's great to get encouragement. You want positive mentors, but you also,
Hmm.
I think what I indicated was sometimes when your mentor has a different perspective or a different way of seeing a problem or a solution that you never saw, right? And I think when
Right.
you have those experiences, it pushes the
Hmm.
envelope a little bit more that, yeah, you don't want cookie cutter mentors that are just like you, because then that defeats the
Yeah.
purpose of learning and growing too, I think, because then you're just validating that your way is the only way, which is
Yeah.
not the case.
It can be like being in an echo chamber,
Yeah, an
You
echo
surround
chamber.
yourself
And
with mentors who just agree with everything you're saying. You want mentors that are going to challenge you. And,
yeah.
so do you try to find when you're deciding to mentor others, do you try to look for opportunities to find people where you can really challenge them in meaningful ways?
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
I I think about it in two ways. One is like when they approach and they already have an idea of how they see me as a mentor and how I could help. But
Hmm.
to your point, I also think that the other way that I think of mentorship is how can I help this person grow and become even more impactful and create even more value for them in the organization, right? So
Right.
I think those are the ways that I think about mentorship and like when I'm given the opportunity to mentor someone else.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
So in the world that we're living in,
Mhm.
and I talked earlier about how technology has driven tremendous change just in us as individual humans, in
Yeah.
society, our connectivity, and in our communities and in the world and so forth. And it can get exhausting, and and it can almost feel like no matter where you go, no matter what you do, it's hard to disconnect from work. It's hard to
Mhm.
disconnect from the thought processes at work, and technology is always there. How do you, in sort of this fast paced world of technology and innovation and so forth, how do you approach work life balance?
Yeah.
And are there like specific habits or rituals that help you stay grounded?
Yeah. I think about first of all, I do believe work is part of life, right? I don't think work life balance. I always think work is just one aspect of life, just like relationships and hobbies and everything. But with that said, I think yes, there work life is going to ebb and flow, right? There's going to be times where you're needed more at work, you're needed more with your family, you're needed more with your hobbies or
Hmm.
what have you. But for me, it's important, and especially as I've been the leader for Amgen Ohio from a tech standpoint, I have a lot of demands that come to me every day. I have to figure out
I
how to
believe it.
I have to prioritize. I've never gotten more ruthless in prioritizing until I got into this role, right? But like I think prioritizing delegating has helped me balance of like how do I leverage my team and as we said, their superpowers to keep the charge going while giving me the opportunity to focus on something else, right?
Hmm.
From a strategy standpoint or what have you.
Right,
But
right.
I also think about the boundaries I have also put in place with my personal life, right? Like 12 to 1, unless there's a major meeting that needs to be happening at that time, that's my like lunch slash workout time, right?
Oh,
And
so you're a lunchtime workout person?
yeah, I can be.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I can be that. And then, but like for example, I'll go to the yoga studio, or
Yeah.
that's my way of breaking away, right?
Hmm.
I will at night, I will disconnect from my phone, and I know that there's certain people that have my phone number and can call me, but it's like, here, this is Disha's personal time, right? This is my time with my family and my
Mm-hmm.
the people that I care about. And but if work needs to be called on, I will go, I will pick up the
Yeah.
phone if I need to, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But
For sure.
I think that that balance is very, very important. And I've
Yeah.
become even more intentional about it. And there's this book that I've been reading that one of my coaches gave me, by Zetlin, called Career Self Care, right? And
Right.
it gives you these principles of like, it's okay to have boundaries. It is okay to say no, right?
Right.
And it is okay to take a vacation and have a delegate in place and not pick up the phone. So I think those are something, it's okay to take breaks in between. And so I really try to leverage those types of tactics for my work life balance.
Yeah. I think we can all relate to, being on vacation or taking a day of PTO, being away from work, and allowing, thoughts of work and your obligations and your responsibilities,
Mhm.
and the fact that you've probably got, you know, emails that are piling up, letting that get into your head. And it's so easy to go, well, I'm just going to take, like, I'm on vacation, I'm going to take, a little bit of time to just go log in and do a little bit of work, and so forth. Are there, and like you said, it's okay to say no. It's okay
Mhm.
to give yourself the kind of self-care that it needs. I think we often don't think about it in that way. We don't think about it in the light of, if I take this time for myself to, as you said, it's
Mhm.
lunchtime, I'm going to yoga.
Mhm.
The second part of the day will likely be much more effective and much more impactful for you
Yeah.
and for everybody else, because you invested that time in yourself. Especially, I'm a huge advocate for working out every day.
That's great.
And yeah, and I because I've seen it for myself that when I take the time to do that, it
Mhm.
results in more energy, more emotional bandwidth, more clarity of mind. I'm sure you find yourself, like, while you're doing yoga and so forth, thinking, like, as you were saying, you've got your team focusing on the tactical things, or they're running the ship, so to speak, and you're thinking strategy.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I feel like I have my best ideas or my best breakthroughs when I'm in the gym.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that may seem like it sort of conflicts with this idea of work-life balance, but to your point, like, just like what you said, life, work and technology and all these things, it's a part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think yoga, well, one thing I have to do in yoga is be present. That's what they tell me to do in yoga class, be present.
Yeah.
So, if anything, it's taught me how to apply that into my work life, my work side of
Really.
the pillar
Yeah.
of like when I'm in the moment, like when I'm at work, how ensuring that I'm there, being there in the present with my team, with understanding the situations and our priorities and our strategy. But it's about being in the moment, right? So
Hmm.
what I would also say is that that's the beauty of relationships, hobbies, and work, is that they all feed into each other, right? Like they're
Hmm.
not solely separate entities. And then to your point,
Yeah.
that by sometimes taking that break, you also are more impactful later in the day, or in the moments that you're needed to be more impactful, because you're running on full energy and not a half battery kind of
Yeah.
mindset. So
Yeah. You talking about, sort of building those skills of being in the moment,
mhm,
really resonate with me, and
yeah.
I agree with you. I'm not. And so I I think yoga is probably the hardest workout you can do. It's kind of a silly thing to say because I
Mhm.
mean, it's yoga is almost like a framework, and you can certainly have easier yoga sessions and so forth. I will say, the hardest workouts I've had, I can point to yoga sessions that I've had that were just crazy. And to your point, it's a lot of what's going on up here
Mhm.
and forcing you to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And I will admit I probably need more yoga in my life and more practice, like more being in the moment practice,
Yeah.
because I'm terrible at it. Like I'm not kidding. Like I am the worst
Yeah.
at, like, I feel like, at least I'm like, because when I'm in a meeting, or when I'm like helping my daughter with homework, or I'm having a conversation with my wife, or or
Mhm.
whatever, it's so hard for me not to be thinking about all the other things that are going on, and the high priority items, or the things that I'm worried about, or whatever,
Yeah.
and so just finding ways to practice shutting that down and being in the moment and letting it be
Yeah.
is something that I'll admit I need more of that in my life.
Yeah. No, I mean, yoga is great to do that. And I can tell you, Sean, before I started doing yoga more routinely, I was the same way of like my 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 head space was running 100 miles a minute, right? And I was thinking
Hmm.
about everything but what I was in the moment trying to do, right? And
Yep.
so I think it helped me slow down a little bit. And it's also, I have to say, coming out of yoga class, I'm always zened out. And
That's awesome,
even if you give me bad news at that point, I'm just like, okay, cool, I got it.
because you're on that high,
Yeah, you're on
you're,
that high.
yeah,
We'll manage it. We'll manage it. We'll
yeah,
navigate through it, right? So,
yeah.
but
Well, there's definitely something to be said for exercise and those endorphins, and
yes,
and all that stuff, like the changes that happen in your brain while you're working out. It really is very, very powerful.
yeah, yeah. So
So
fitness is very important. Staying fit as
yeah,
much as like continuing to learn and grow. Your brain is another thing, but like staying physically fit is a very important thing for me.
yeah, yeah.
So
I agree with you. Everything goes together: your body, your mind, your emotion, your emotions,
mhm,
your spirit, and
yeah,
those kinds of things. It's you got to take care of all of it. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree with you. Do you mind if we maybe transition a little bit and talk? I'm really interested to talk a bit about Amgen.
yeah, sure.
Awesome. So Amgen is, as you said earlier, really at the cutting edge of tech, like biotech and artificial intelligence. What excites you the most about the future of tech?
Yeah. Listen, I'm always amazed of how tech continues to evolve, right? Like, some people might know
Hmm.
about the Industry 1.0 concept where it was steamboats, and then Industry 2.0, we get electricity, and now some people say we're in Industry 6.0 now, right? Like, the fact that technology continues to evolve, the fact, like, certain concepts I remember studying in college. I remember studying AI in college. I remember studying algorithms in college.
Hmm.
But like now is the time like when AI and is becoming harnessed even more. And I think that just shows the evolution of research around technologies as they get more sophisticated, as they
Hmm.
become more democratized and available to
Yeah.
broader society. Like that is something that I'm excited about, that AI is now, it's not a concept that I was learning in in college, but it's
Right.
actually, and it's, I have to say the time is right now, right? Like the time is right because one, we've done more research in that area. Two, we have the computing power that we've never imagined. We
Hmm.
have the structured unstructured data and how to manage through that. Like I think like AI is very exciting times, right? But I'm even more excited that we'll have the Jetsons life that I remember when I was growing up.
Yeah, you and
That
me
will be our
both.
life eventually, right? And so I think
Right.
the beauty in technology, but specifically with Amgen, it's not, it's, we're doing the best work of our lives right now at Amgen, I think, and being able to harness technology and with biotech and really try to transform how we think about drug discovery, how we think
Mm-hmm.
about uh, manufacturing for our products, and ultimately how these products get to our patients, right? And if anything, I think technology is going to be such an important piece. It is already an important piece, right? But I think it's going to become even more important of like maybe transforming us from the traditional 15-year life cycle of R&D to like, could you imagine R&D research in biotech and pharma going down to 2 years, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like thinking about how we act, how this the medicine is available to our patients even more timely and more personalized than ever before, right? So
Right.
I think
Right.
about all those things, and I know they're happening. That we've already seen progression there, but I think with AI, it's just going to take it to another level.
And is Amgen, do you guys have like an AI strategy? Are you guys I assume you guys are actively, building artificial
Yes.
intelligence into the way in which you do,
Yeah.
like you said, product discovery and
Yeah.
manufacturing and I would assume even like your business operations.
Yeah. Yes, we are definitely, and
Yeah.
um, it's an amazing time as our
Yeah.
as our
It's fun.
leaders as our leaders say we're at a hinge moment of tech and biotech coming together, and
Hmm.
it's I'm excited to be a part of Amgen, and I'm excited about the future of healthcare and biotech with
That's
technology.
that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
On the flip side, what concerns you the most? Like whether it's in healthcare or technologies like artificial intelligence or just technology in general,
Yeah.
are there like ethical considerations that you think technology leaders need to be more aware of?
Yeah, I listen, I had the opportunity in college to take a course on ethics and society uh,
Oh
through
yeah.
technology, right? And it was one of my most powerful courses. Yes, the math classes were fun. Yes, the programming classes were fun, at least in my eyes. But this ethics course and this this course on society and technology was very impactful because it made me start to understand and think about that, there are some downsides of technology, right? There are going to be the bad actors out there. You do have to worry more and more about cybersecurity. You do have to
Hmm.
worry more about privacy and malicious intent, right? Like you hope that that's not part of technology, but it's there, right? And you have to be able to deal with it head on and understand that, the ethical principles around a technology and using technology, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so those are I mean, I think we all have that. We want to use technology for good, but there are people out there that necessarily don't think that the same way.
This is true. Yeah, unfortunately, there's always going to be bad actors out there.
Yeah.
So, I want to be respectful of your time. This has been a really great conversation. So, as we're sort of wrapping up, I'm curious, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you've received in your journey, and how has it shaped things for you?
Yeah. Well, it's hard just to say one, but maybe
Yeah, of
one, two,
course,
or
of
something
course.
like that. But I think honestly, the first one is, when I was early in my career, I was always given the advice, hey, raise your hand, get involved in activities and that was very important to me at earlier in my career because it helped me see the possibilities out there, understand what I liked and what I did not like. But as I've gotten older and more in tune into my career, I've been also very intentional. And one coach
Hmm.
that I had was like, Disha, it's okay to say no. Right. And that's a pretty powerful statement because I'm usually someone who tends to say yes. And like, I would have to
Yeah.
say that the no, like setting boundaries and also recognizing that sometimes in your life, certain things are just not the right time for something. I've had career opportunities where I've said no to, right? Because it all goes back to where I want to align my purpose, right? And we started the conversation around purpose, and I
Yeah.
really think that as I get, it's powerful advice to be able to say no and be intentional about why you're doing what you're doing in the context of your purpose, right?
Hmm.
The other advice that I would say is being okay to go out of your comfort zone, which we also talked about, but going
Yep.
outside of your comfort zone and knowing that you may not have all the skill sets to do a job, but recognizing that you either have people who believe in you or you have the ability, and you need to get away from that imposter syndrome that you can do it, right? And
Yeah.
so being willing to take those risks and go out of your comfort zone. So I would say that's the other biggest advice because it can also lead to many amazing moments and aha moments that you never thought were imaginable if you constrained your thinking or stayed in your zone, if that makes sense.
Well, I love it. I love it. And to your point, when you're more comfortable saying no, we don't often think about it like this, but when you say
Hmm.
no to things,
Hmm.
then that's more bandwidth so you can say yes to the right things, and leaning into those things that really reflect your purpose. And like you said, as we started off this conversation, being in tune with your
Hmm.
gifts, your unique gifts, and your purpose in this world can really be a powerful sort of litmus test for when it makes sense to say yes. Like, what are the right opportunities?
Yes. Yeah. And I think as you know, as we wrap up this podcast, I really would say that if I had to leave the audience with one thing, it is going back
Hmm.
to the purpose that we were just
Yeah,
talking about. And just that, the more that you can get in tune, and I know it's not easy for everyone to figure out their purpose, and as you said, it can be when you're 80 or 90 years old that you figure out your purpose, but just trying to figure that out can make your life and your career even more meaningful and impactful when
very well said.
it's centered around that purpose.
That is very, very sage advice. Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
I got to tell you, Disha, this has been amazing. I'm first of all, I'm so honored to include you in my tribe of mentors,
Oh,
and
thank
and I
you.
no, 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 thank you. I know our audience is going to walk away with just so much from this conversation. So thanks for being here, Disha.
Thank you, Sean, for having me, and really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
you including us in the Silicon Heartland
Heck yeah,
conversation. So look forward to continuing staying in touch. And thanks again for the
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Silicon Heartland Sessions. And if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your network. You can find more episodes wherever you listen to podcasts, and be sure to follow us for updates and behind the scenes content. So until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Thanks, Sean.
Awesome. Thank you.